Welcome everyone, my name is Zan Ta with Revit Parts. Our presentation today is on what's new in Autodesk Point Layout 2017. Our agenda will take a look at the offerings that Revit Parts has to our clients. We'll get into the definition of what Autodesk Point Layout is. We'll then take a look at the new features within Autodesk Point Layout 2017 and then jump into the software. Revit Parts is a company that's been around for quite a while, 35 plus years. We have multiple divisions. We do all the printing and formatting for the AEC industry. Small format, wide format, large prints. We sell and support all of these devices as well. We have a second division where we are Autodesk Gold Partners, Autodesk resellers. We sell and support all of the Autodesk software such as AutoCAD, Revit, Navisworks, so on and so forth. And we provide training and implementation as well as customization. We have another division called the 3D Reality Capture Division, and that gives us the ability to scan existing conditions with equipment and come back to the office to generate a 3D point cloud file for use in your design workflow. There are other multiple divisions within the company as well, and there's a sister company called the Color Spot that's up in Marietta, and their focus is on vehicle graphics, signage, digital graphics, wayfaring, so on and so forth. If you are local and you'd like a tour of the facilities, just come on in and ask anybody to help. They'll stop what they're doing and give you a quick tour. So what is Autodesk Point Layout? A great way to understand what Autodesk Point Layout is to watch a video. And so here we go.
Traditional field layout using a tape measure, printed drawings, and field books is a slow, tedious, and error-prone process. Now that many buildings are designed with a building information modeling process, why not leverage this information to make layout easier in the field? Well, now you can with Autodesk Point Layout. This breakthrough method improves office to field efficiency, reduces errors, and speeds up your field productivity. Autodesk Point Layout is innovative software for the construction layout process. Point Layout integrates with Autodesk AutoCAD, Autodesk Navisworks, and Autodesk Revit software to automatically create points and transfer them to the robotic total station. Field layout is much faster, easier, and accurate compared to the traditional paper and tape measure methods. BIM data from the model and the total station can be imported and exported to capture as-built conditions. By sending data to and from the field, Point Layout not only helps to improve the speed and accuracy of installation, it also captures installed positions for quality control and assurance. Complete layout with more accuracy and less man-hours, helping to save time and money. Point Layout can also help reduce crew size and time on site, resulting in improved project safety. Point Layout effectively bridges the gap between CAD or BIM and the field to streamline and accelerate the entire BIM design to field construction workflow. Build projects faster, more accurately, on time, and on budget with Autodesk Point Layout.
So when we try to understand what Autodesk Point Layout is, it's a great tool to help us with understanding the different conditions that we have in the field that may be inefficient for marking and placing either existing or new conditions. We can use the software to generate the points that we need in the field for marking as-built conditions. We can take those points and then bring into the digital 3D environment using, say, Navisworks or AutoCAD or Revit. And then from there, align that with our new design, or we can go the other way around. We can take our new design and use Autodesk Point Layout to place the new design points of the building, or say for example the column grid, and then use those points to put into a total station and generate those new design points out in the field. When we take a look at the field layout workflow for BIM 360, What we're talking about is understanding what we're doing in the perspective of the model and creating that 3D digital design using such tools as Revit, AutoCAD, and Navisworks. We then take that information and use Autodesk Point Layout to generate the new points that we need. For example, the tops of the isolated footings, or maybe even the column to footing base plate connection points. We then take that information and export it out of the software and bring it into the Total Robotic Station and let that machine help us with laying out those points in the field. We can then manage those points and understand those points using such tools as Autodesk BIM 360 Field, Point Layout, and Navisworks. So now let's take a look at what's new in Autodesk Point Layout 2017. The first is you now have the ability to take and place Autodesk Point Layout points onto Revit Parts. For those of you who are not aware, Revit Parts basically means when you have a system family such as a floor or a wall, it's made up of multiple layers of information that make up that specific system family. Since 2015, you've had the ability to select that object and break it up into its individual component parts. So the new feature in APL 2017 is to give you the ability to place those points on just those parts themselves and not just the entire system family as a whole. For those of you who are on the MEP fabrication side, Autodesk provides software such as Fabrication CADmep, SMEP, and DuctMep software. When it comes to Autodesk Point Layout 2017 new feature, you now have the ability to import and export the Revit fabrication drawing, or model if you will, that you create in Revit to Fabrication MEP. And from there, within Fabrication MEP software, which is AutoCAD based, you have the ability to place the APL points on those specific objects. You also have APL support for CADmep based content when it comes to fabrication and CADmep. You also have DXF creation support for third-party content as well. In regards to the Navisworks 2017 integration with APL 2017, you can actually place APL points now onto grids that are coming from file types such as IFC. And then lastly, you have the ability to use a 360 BIM glue layout integration easier and better within either FabMEP software or Navisworks or AutoCAD or Revit. So let's go ahead and jump into the Autodesk software to take a look at the new features of APL 2017. So here I am in Autodesk Revit 2017, and I have a 3D model up. It's a structural model. And the first thing I'd like to show is just some basics of what is Autodesk Point Layout for those who are not familiar with the software right off the bat. Let's say, for example, we head over to a specific level, such as the roof or even, say, architectural second floor. We have grid lines here that help us define the intersections of the design. We'll shade it up so it makes it a little easier for you to see. Autodesk Point Layout is a tool that allows us to place points, for example, on the intersections of the grid lines to help us mark those points in the field. So let's go ahead and do that. We have a tab called Autodesk Point Layout in the ribbon, and in here there are tons of tools within each of the tabs to help us place those points. Let's go ahead and place points now. So over here in the Setup tab of the ribbon, under the Autodesk Point Layout tab, you have the command for control point. We'll place it, and it'll give us a little window called Building Control Points. We can specify a prefix if we want to, so we'll say GRD The point number can be any kind of point numbering system that we want. We want to be consistent though. For example, if you're placing points on the first floor, then perhaps the point numbering system starts at 1,000. The second floor would start at 2,000. The third floor would start at 3,000, so on and so forth. For the grid points themselves, let's use a number, say 9999. The point description will be grid intersection control point, and we can place it on the grid. When we do this, it'll bring up a little window that says whether we want to append the grid line names to the description. We'll say yes, it's fine. We'll specify a specific level we want to put them on, and we'll put it on arc-second floor. And once you've done this, it'll say in the lower left corner, select the grid lines. So we'll do a window crossing like this, and it knows to pick just the grid lines. We'll click Finish, and when we're done, we click Done. Now that we've done this, we can zoom in and take a look at the points themselves. So let's zoom in a little bit, and if you scroll in, they're actually kind of small, and you can see they're made up these little rectangular or cube-based families called generic model GTP control point. If we need to, we can manage them as well. For example, if I click Manage, we can select all the points that we just created, hit Apply so that they're going to be within our schedule here, and we can set and change different aspects of the objects. For example, setting the color and hitting OK. Now, depending on the software that you're working with and what version, you may have some conflicts with the color display. So a lot of times people will go through and they'll select that particular object, select all of them in the entire project or just those visible, and then we can override by right-clicking and overriding their graphics. So for example, we can specify different weights, different colors, and different patterns, as well as the surface pattern. And now you can see, the other thing too is if you have the command thin lines turned on, you may not be able to see thick lines. So now I've turned it on and it's a little easier to see those points. Let's take a look at this in 3D. Let's say, for example, we head over to this particular floor here. You can see that this floor is made up of a system family called Floor 4.5 inch Northwest concrete on 2-inch metal deck. If I want to place points on that particular object, I can. Head over to the Autodesk Point Layout, and we'll put it on slab footing. We'll say select sub, so we can actually pick the object that we want. It's going to be a control point. The point prefix could be whatever we want. Let's say SCP for slab control point. We're started at 2000 is fine. It is a stakeout, and we'll click OK. It's going to ask us in the lower left corner to select the object itself. So we're going to pick this object. We're finished picking, so we're going to hit Finish, and then it'll place those points. By default, it places the top and bottom of those points as well as a default, but you can adjust and change that if you need to. Let's say we do it again. This time we choose a set distance, say 5 feet, every 5 feet gridded, and we hit OK and select the same object again, hit Finish, and it'll place those points every 5 feet. So this is, in a nutshell, the basics of what Autodesk Point Layout is. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the first new feature of Autodesk Point Layout, which is being able to place those points on parts. So here we are in that file again. This time I've gone ahead and removed all the points. And again, let's take a look at this particular floor system family. If we select it and go into its type properties and head into the structure of it, we can see it's made up of two layers, a structure one called concrete and another second layer called structural deck that's using a profile. We have the ability in Revit to select the object and turn it into parts. Over here in the ribbon, there's a contextual tab called Modify Floors. Just to the left of the green contextual panels, there is a panel called Create, and in here there's a Create Parts command. Click it, and it actually will ask us to turn that into those parts. Once we've done this, we can select it, and we can see that it's actually made up of parts. When you're looking at an object that has already been turned into parts, you'll get a contextual tab called Modify Parts. And you can do things such as excluding parts or dividing them. And then since this is a structural object, we can put reinforcement. Now when you're looking at your particular view and you have nothing selected, you'll have the instance property of the view. In here you have the ability to specify whether you want to see the parts or the original or both. So I'm going to say show parts, which is the default once you initiate that command. Now let's head over to Autodesk Point Layout and use the new command, place Autodesk Point Layout on parts. We can start the command, specify what kind of point that we're working with. Again, we'll say control point, and this will be slab control point 2000. That's fine. Selecting some, but now we have the ability to filter by material. And let's say we just want the top. We'll click OK, and now it's going to bring up the Select Materials dialog box, and we can actually put a check mark for the particular part that we're working with. Hit OK, and then it'll say select the part. So we pick this object, we hit Finish in the Options toolbar, and now the points are created. So if I zoom in a little bit, you can see that the point that I needed has been placed at that intersection. So that's one of the first new features in Autodesk Point Layout 2017, which is to be able to place points on parts in Revit. Another new feature in Autodesk Point Layout 2017 is the ability to import and export Revit fabrication parts to a MAJ file type to be used in fabrication software. Here I am in Revit 2017. I have just a basic MEP system, and if you notice very carefully, each of these objects are actually fabrication parts. These objects were created by using the System tab of the ribbon and using the Fabrication Part command within Revit 2017. Now that we have some basis to work with, if we head over to Extensions, or actually add-ins, we have under Revit Extensions for Fabrication panel the ability to import and export fabrication parts to an MAJ file type. So when you initially start the command to export the data, it'll ask you to select the parts you want to export. So let's go ahead and grab everything, then head back to the add-ins, and then click Export Fabrication Job File. It'll ask you to create a new file type. You can give it any name that you want. It's a .maj file. You can see I've already created one. Hit Save and it will create that particular file. Why do we have this capability? So we can get into taking that file and bringing it into Fabrication CADmep and showing the Autodesk Point Layout new feature in there. So here I am in Fabrication CADmep software, and you'll notice you're in that particular software, which is AutoCAD based. Even though it says Autodesk AutoCAD 2017, I know I'm in that particular software because I've got some special pull downs here for working with fabrication content. Let's go ahead and we'll start a new file, and within Fabrication MEP we'll start a new command, and that command allows us to import in the particular MAJ file. Here's the file that we created earlier by exporting the data out of Revit, and we'll hit open. That new content will come in. You'll get a dialog box called Fab Viewer, and that gives us the ability to view the content of that MAJ file. This is one way to start creating fabrication content. Now, although I'm not an MEP engineer, or I don't do that kind of manufacturing fabrication kind of work, this is a simple, easy way to show one of the new features in Autodesk Point Layout 2017. You do have the ability, obviously, to create this entire system within Fabrication CADmep software itself. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and then we'll zoom in to take a look at it, and then we'll also change the display so you can see a little easier. Now that we have our working 3D model within Fabrication CADmep, we can go ahead and start using the software to understand the objects that we're working with. When we look at the field point dialog box, we can see all the points and the data that's inside. If we need to, we can click Compute Order, and what this will do is it allows us to tell the software, or the software actually will tell us, what is the best path to take to start placing those points in the field. So I'll click Compute Order, and then select inside that dialog box, and if we zoom in, we can start to see there's a pathing that tells us where to go to start marking those points. We'll click OK, and now it's going to ask us to export that data out into a file type for us to work with. If we take a look at the different file types that we can work with, one of them is a field point field link file for Trimble, and that's one of the great benefits of using this software, is because Trimble's stations, as you know, are pretty much saturated in the market out there, and so this gives us the ability to export the data out for that device and work properly. I'm going to cancel this for now, and then we'll get into using the Autodesk Point Layout CADmep Parts command. Up here in the ribbon, we have the Autodesk Point Layout tab. We'll go ahead and get a license for myself, and now that particular aspect of the software is functioning. And again, I have all of my tools that are very similar to those that you saw in Revit 2017 with APL integration and that tab. We'll go ahead and use the CADmep points command to place the points on those particular objects. So for example, we'll just see duct hangers. So we have duct hangers. Our point prefix is DH. Our numbering is 2000. The layer is APL duct hanger points. We'll work with stakeout, that's fine. We can put a description if we need to, and we'll click OK. It'll ask us if we want to select just certain hangers or all of them. I'm going to say all of them. Hangers. And it's automatically going to place the points and number them for us. Let's go ahead and go back to the F-point command and select a particular hanger, say this one, and hit enter. There's some data in here that is being used and extracted for that Autodesk Point Layout content. So you'll see here for description, it says profiled bearded hanger and other descriptive information as well. If we need to, we can actually go into managing those points. And when you're managing the points, the Manage Points dialog box will open up, and we can select the points that we're working with. So let's just pick one for now. Hit Apply and expand this window so we can start to see the data that's in here. You'll see it says DH2028. Point description is profiled bearded hanger. This is what we saw earlier coming from the F-point command. And so all of this rich data is being pulled from that BIM metadata object of the hanger itself. We can obviously do a number of things such as the coloring and the sizing like we saw earlier, but we also can do things like renumber them. So let's zoom out a little bit and click renumber. You have the ability to renumber the points quickly and automatically. For example, from the upper left corner down to the lower right corner. And we can specify what the point numbering system begins with. So let's say 2001. We'll hit OK. And you notice very carefully all the numbers are starting to shift and change. And it's finished. So you can see there's 2001, 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. So that's quickly what is the new feature in Autodesk Point Layout 2017 when it comes to Fabrication CADmep. The last thing I want to talk about in regards to Autodesk Point Layout 2017, and just in general when it comes to BIM 360 workflow, is the ability to take a look at your model within the cloud-based BIM 360 environment. Here, for example, I have Autodesk BIM 360 Glue started up, and we have a couple models that have thrown up already. One is the presentation model of the structural model you saw earlier in Revit, and then one is the actual Fabrication CADmep model. Let's take a look at the first one. In this particular clean viewer, you have the ability to do several things. You can measure objects if you need to. You can take a look at the different models that are available and whether you see or don't see the data. And we'll take a look at this a little bit in depth with the other model. You have the ability to take a look at any saved or shared views that you need. So for example, as I select a particular view that's been saved, it jumps to that view. It's very similar to named views in AutoCAD. And so it just gives you the ability to kind of work with the area that you need to work with. You have the ability to mark up and add a particular markup if you need to. When you do this, there is a dialog box that pops up that gives you some basic markup capability. For example, a text, so freehand, line, line string, circle, and erase. You also have color changing as well for the particular markup that you're doing. So let's say, for example, we specify a little circle, a line over here, and then a piece of text description that says verify connection being used. Something like that. And excuse me, we can save that particular markup if we need to, and now that markup is there. You also have different levels of activity, if you will, for the particular model that you're working with, and this basically tells you the history of what's going on. Let's go ahead and jump back to the other file, the other model, Fabrication CADmep. And things that you have the ability to do, like I said earlier, is the shared views. We can take a look at the Fabrication MEP file itself, whether you see it or don't see it. You have the ability to take a look at the history as well. Any clashes that have been assigned or created. So if I click find clashes, it will try to find any that it can. So we'll take a look at the two and specify a tolerance and give it a name, and we'll click find clashes. We'll say a tolerance of 1 inch. And we'll let it run through and tell us if it could find any clashes. And then lastly, you can click attachments and see any kind of attachments that you might want to place with this particular file and object. As a quick review, we've covered in this presentation what's new in Autodesk Point Layout 2017. We took a quick look at what is Revit and APL integration, the basics. We covered how to place APL points onto Revit Parts. We took a look at exporting a Revit fabrication model to an MAJ file to bring into Fabrication MEP software such as Fabrication CADmep. We were within that particular software to use the CADmep APL new feature and place points on those particular objects. And then we also took a quick look at a 360 BIM glue layout integration. I don't have a particular file to use for showing the APL points new feature on grids within Navisworks 2017. To make sure it's clear that for people who understand, when you're looking at a Revit model and you're using the standard column grid command, you can place APL points within the Revit software all day on that grid line and those intersections. You can also do that within AutoCAD. However, grid lines in Revit, when they translate and show up as a Revit file within the Navisworks software, are not selectable. They're not tangible. They're not physical objects that APL can physically see and touch. So from that perspective, you can't use a standard grid line command in Revit and expect APL points to be used on those intersections. You will for now have to use tools such as 3D model lines and create grid lines with that, and the APL points command will be able to see those intersections of those 3D model lines. This new feature, APL points on grids for Navisworks, really is for the purposes of if there's other types of 3D content coming in, such as an IFC file. And the IFC file, those grid lines are visible by APL, and you can select them and you can put points on them. And that's our presentation today on what's new in Autodesk Point Layout 2017. Again, my name is Zan Ta from Revit Products. Thank you very much for watching. And if you have any questions or need any service or support or software or anything, just give us a call or come stop by the office. Thank you very much.